It was Monday morning, and my wife had out her calendar planning her week. Obviously planning the schedule. And she asked me, what do you want to do, or where do you want to go for your birthday dinner? On one level, it is a simple question. But for all who have been married for any length of time, you know that isn't all there is to it. I hadn't said anything about going anywhere for a birthday dinner. Reading between the lines, I interpreted the following: that Barbara was tired of cooking, that she had recovered sufficiently from her recent surgery and wanted to go out. And to add fuel to the fire, she added the comment, "We have a gift certificate to Longstreet." I said, fine, I guess I know what I'm doing for my birthday. And it was fun. It was fun. But all of that led to the question that she raised after a long pause. I guess she realized that I hadn't said anything about going anywhere, and her question was, what are you hungry for? What are you hungry for? She asked that without realizing that she had asked one of the most profound theological questions that we as human beings can ask of one another. What is it that we really hunger for? Last week we began a series of gospel readings from John's Gospel, about 6 weeks worth, as a matter of fact. This gospel is so very different from the first three. Its characteristic is that Jesus describes himself in a series of metaphors by saying, I am. I am. That is not true in the other three Gospels. And as you heard in the Gospel for this morning, he said, I am bread. I am bread. The setting for that had been a grassy hillside that overlooked Lake Gennesaret. He had gone there with his disciples to give them some downtime after their initial ministry to the surrounding towns and villages. But the people were hungry. Hungry for anything that he said or did. Terribly hungry people. He had them to sit down, and we are told that he taught them. All day long, he taught them. Obviously interpreting their scriptures, those Hebrew scriptures that they had grown up with, and giving them obviously a different twist, something they had not heard before. Late in the day, Philip whispers in his ear, everybody's getting hungry, send them home so we can all eat. And to Philip's astonishment, Jesus turned to him and said, you feed them. You feed them. He didn't say you've lost your mind, but he did say it would take 6 months' wages for enough to buy food for these people. And then he casually mentions that there is a young lad there with his lunch. A little bread and a couple dried fish. And Jesus says, that's enough. And he proceeds to feed them. He feeds them. He says to them, I am the bread of life. feed on meat. When I'm in my car, particularly on the road going somewhere, I do not like the local station, so I use my iPod, on which I have a couple thousand songs, and that keeps me entertained. Simon and Garfunkel are among my old-time favorites, and I think I have everything they've ever done on that iPod. Whenever I preach on the I Am stories of Jesus in John's Gospel, I recall that line in one of Paul Simon's songs. Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? A nation turns its lonely eyes to you. What's that you say, Mrs. Robinson? Jolton Joe has left and gone away. It was originally part of the soundtrack for the film The Graduate, and Mrs. Robinson has become one of his best-known ballads. Paul Simon did an interview for 60 Minutes a number of years ago. Some of you may have seen it. I watched it intently. He said in that interview about the song, Where Have You Gone? And Joe DiMaggio expressed in a letter after that interview on 60 Minutes, he wrote a letter saying that he didn't really understand all of the befuddlement about that line, where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? He said, I haven't gone anywhere, I'm still around. I'm selling Mr. Coffee machines. Paul Simon smiled wryly at Mike Wallace and remarked, obviously, Mr. DiMaggio is not accustomed to thinking of himself as a metaphor. Then who of us is? How often do we think of ourselves as a metaphor? We are real people. We have literal, descriptive identities. We don't go around saying, I am this or I am that. Although that's true. We all have those labels. I'm a pastor, for instance. I'm a husband, father, a professor, a university chaplain. At least I was. They're all straightforward descriptions of who I am in relation to the people around me, the people in my life. So to my two children, I am father. To my wife, I am husband. Like most of you, I cannot readily conceive of myself as a symbol for something, as a kind of metaphor. We just don't think of ourselves that way. We expect people to denote themselves by saying things like, I am a plumber, or I am whatever my occupation happens to be. It's a fairly superficial way. We don't have or hear someone say, I am the oil that lubes my company's machine. That's using a metaphor. Or I am the antibody in my family that protects them from whatever the threat is. We don't think in those terms. After Jesus said, I am the light of the world that illumines all, the Pharisees derided him. They said very quickly, "You're crazy." That Jesus couldn't illumine anything or anyone, and he was certainly not shedding any light on his own identity. After he said, "I am the good shepherd," the crowds denounced him as a lunatic, saying he was possessed of a demon and he was raving mad. And the last of his "I am" sayings, "I am resurrection and life," they arrested him. And ultimately, they killed him. Let me go back to that existential question of Barbara's. What are you hungry for? It's a good question. What are you and I hungry for? I pondered that for almost a day this week, and I came up with three things. I think that each of us hungers to belong. We are hungry for belonging. I've often told the story of my parents who worked for nearly 10 years living in a one-bedroom apartment until they had enough to make the down payment on a house. One of those ubiquitous two-bedroom frame houses that cropped up after the Second World War. I remember it with great fondness because for the first time in my life I had my own room. It was wonderful. The problem with it was that it was in an entirely new and different neighborhood. I had to begin high school in a school that was totally foreign to me. That high school was fed by 7 surrounding grammar schools. So the kids that came from each grammar school at least had 15 or 20 friends or acquaintances that they had gone to school with from the first grade. I didn't know a single solitary soul. I longed to belong. And fortunately, in my case, the church provided a place for me to belong. A youth group. I think each of us hungers for value. You and I want to be seen as people of value. We're worth something. Not just what we are worth financially, but what we are worth as human beings, worth to each other. I'm sure I'm not the only one that begins the day with the newspaper, and essential to that newspaper is reading the obituaries. I always sigh a great sigh of relief if I'm not listening. I occasionally, unfortunately more often recently, come across the names of people that I have known. The obituary gives the facts about them, but usually there's something in the obituary that says to whom they were of value. It may have been to their business, but certainly to their family and friends. We want to be of value, and we want to be perceived as people of value. When I look back over the years, I recall those individuals in my life who left their imprint on me. And I am grateful to them because they helped shape who I am today. So we want to be people of value. We hunger for value. Be of value to our friends, our families, to the community. And thirdly, I believe that each of us is hungry for a purpose. Purpose. That we don't live just to exist. Every now and then I come across someone who is simply existing from day to day. Not knowing where they're going or what they're doing, they just are there. Unfortunately, that is true of a lot of college students. Those 10 years that I spent as the chaplain at the university, I would have students come in my office and I would ask them, well, what are you majoring in? What do you want to do? What's important to you? And unfortunately, I would get answers like, well, everybody was going to college, so I applied. Well, I'm having a good time. Not a purpose. There are simply those who think that when you ask, what is your purpose, think you're crazy. Unfortunately, that's true that many of those students, and I think many adults, are not living. They are existing. To get beyond existing, you need a purpose. It's worth thinking about. Take it home with you. Jesus said, I am bread. That's the short form of I am here to tell you that you are of infinite value. You and I are of infinite value. If you don't believe me, go back and read that gospel for this morning. That each of us has been signed with that sign of the cross, that it's been proclaimed that we are God's very own child. And so our calling is to live each day of our life that we are empowered by that knowledge. You are marked as Christ's own forever. And He is bread.